Trauma, trauma, trauma. Ugh. My socks are wet. Oh man. So, you know, I'm not an expert in anything. But I didn't really explain in my biggest trauma video what I did about the trauma. So-called trauma. It's not really trauma. It's just energy. It's just stuck energy, you know? So, not that you can really think about it, but if you think about it, like, what do you do with stuck energy? You think you could think your way out of getting it unstuck? Or do you feel like the body literally has so much intelligence that's beyond the mind, and it can totally process or do whatever it needs to do? Like, this kind of stuck energy is understandable why it got stuck in the first place, because we're just scared, and it's understandable that when the body does something off or weird or abnormal, then there's like shock, fear, panic. There's a closing down, there's a trapping, you know? So then it gets sort of stored in the body in a way. And this all innocently happens, okay? And I guess the biggest trauma response here, since it was the freeze response, I never really thought about, oh, maybe I should just let it freeze. Like, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay that the body's totally paralyzed. And it's understandable that the mind would think, this is bad, this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening. What does this mean about me? What are other people gonna think? Am I dysfunctional? Am I broken? You can say all of those kind of things. But if you simply just let the body freeze, and obviously you wouldn't really be allowing that because you're not there already, but by hearing something like this, perhaps you can just notice the tendency to detach from the body, get away from the body, be removed from the body, because all of the things that the mind is saying. And then you simply allow the body to do what it needs to do, to freeze if it needs to freeze. And the body can shake, it can cry, it can release somehow this stuck energy. So the first time that really sort of happened, for me, where there was a lot of being in presence. You know, it was still the person being present, or resting as awareness, and then allowing the body to do whatever it needed to do. for here, a lot of crying happened. Even the not wanting this, wanting to get out of it, wanting it to be different, thinking that this is weird and wrong and this shouldn't be happening. All of that was arising, but yet there was still this overall allowance for it to just freeze or react whatever way it wanted to react. And then you could say that something was processed. And whenever I would talk about fearful or traumatic events that happened in my life, if you more allow the body to kind of react and do what it needs to do as you're expressing, that's a good way of doing it too. You know? Stop running away from the body. Stop detaching. Stop only believing the mind. Oh, it's raining. Because the mind doesn't know. It really doesn't know. It thinks it knows. It thinks it knows what's best. Cozy little nook. So I know I told this story before, but as a sense of self was going, there was a moment where there was panic, fear, confusion, and then the body was just frozen. You know, it felt paralyzed, and I was just in bed in tears. The mind was kind of blank, or maybe it was repeating something like, I don't want to be here, or the usual. But really, the body was just paralyzed. The mind, it lost its power in knowing like what to do. So it wasn't saying, you know, you need to do this or you need to do that. There was just a giving in to the complete paralysis, I guess, the complete like frozenness of the body, and felt like a brick. And my sister was there to just like, you know, touch my back and let me cry. That was really nice. And this is kind of where the so-called story of me and my mom kind of blew up. It was, now looking back, it was really beautiful, but at the time it was really just sad and horrific and kind of a letdown, because I thought I could mend it, you know, in my mind. I thought I could mend it in the story, but it was seen that it was futile. So in the end, it was a good thing, but in the moment, it was like devastation beyond devastation. It was like utter hopelessness. And, you know, from there, I went back home, which is to another city, and I felt so alone. I already felt alone in the city because that's a whole other story of why I chose to live in a city where I have no friends, no family, don't know anyone, and didn't want to get to know anyone. You know? there was kind of a deliciousness in just like being in solitude, and there was a preference for that. So it was like a choice that I made back then. But this time when I came back, I was so deeply alone, and I could feel the immense internal twisting and turmoil and grief, a brick of grief. And yeah, I think I was Zooming with my friend or partner, and he just watched me cry and said, I knew that he understood. I knew that he knew that it was okay, that I was this sad. Sad beyond the idea of sad. I lost everything. I lost my whole story. I lost the hope in my whole story of it ending well, of it, you know, having this like triumphant ending. And in a way, this was an end, but not the way I wanted it to end. This was like the collapse of it, and the collapse of me owning the story, you know, seeing the ending play out, believing the ending. So those were real moments. Those were moments where it was obvious to me that there was no control, that this was it. The paralysis that was arising, that the sadness that was arising, the hopelessness, the stuckness, the confusion, the grief and devastation, like that was it. You know, there was no more belief in the mind of this will fix it. This will make you feel better. This is the answer. This is why this is happening. Like there was no more belief in it. No more trust in the mind, really. Except I was believing the hopelessness, like what it was saying about how hopeless this was and how alone I was. And you know, obviously now I see that those are all just thoughts, but in the moment when you feel that alone, those thoughts just feel really real. It feels like that is reality. Like that's the only reality. So around those moments is when there would also be thoughts of, this is really traumatic. Like the loss of self can be really traumatic. Because it's a lot for the body, you know? It's going through everything to a completely different degree that was never possible before with stronger identification or a stronger sense of self or a stronger here-ness, a stronger central owner of everything. So when it all collapses, like then everything collapses and everything is felt and seen to the foundational essence of what it is. So separation, which is complete aloneness and complete just fear and the desperate need for security and the desperate need to know and the desperate need to land somewhere, like all of that can come up sometimes all at once or here and there. And now when I say that, there's a real beauty to it. Like this is where you see what separation is actually really like truly in its bare essence, in its foundational contractedness, like what it actually really is all about. So it takes a lot. It really does take a lot to completely die, to completely have that center dissolve. And then it's emptiness. It's emptiness beyond emptiness, beyond the idea of emptiness. There's just absolutely nothing. And this nothingness has absolutely no quality, and there's no relating to it. It just is. So any idea that's coming up about emptiness is not it. It's not what this is. It's still beyond still. It's unmoving. It's unchanging. It's not here nor there. It's everything. And who knew that this was possible? That like it's gonna vary for everyone, but a couple months or what was it, a year of going through this sort of like death process of losing everything and grieving and crying, and the intense moments, it wasn't like all throughout the year. I would say it was mostly just really intense just for a couple months. So if I just mentally compare that to what's revealed on the so-called other side of like vastness, you know, yeah, then it's like it's not that bad. It was worth it in that sense. But all of those are still ideas, you know, because again, once you get to the so-called other side where there are no sides, you know, you didn't get anywhere. It's the collapse of all of that, of here and there, this and that, higher, lower. It's a collapse of everything so thoroughly. It's like unbelievable. So then when it's just that, then yeah, it's so clear that anything that's said is just an idea. Anything that's said, it's just not it. It doesn't touch it because nothing can. Should I eat that? Looks yummy. Oh, I was talking about trauma. Drama. The drama of trauma. Yeah. I think it can get confusing as this is happening, because the mind or certain ideas can be really convincing, and then there can be a momentary landing there, you know, a resting there, which I think is fine. It's semi good for the body to sort of rest in that way. But then there's a further letting go. It's like, that's not it either. That's just an idea. That's still a story. And then it goes deeper and deeper. And then there are moments where it feels like forever, like an endless, just a depth of suffering that's just never ending or something. But it's partially, like, obviously I don't know anything, but it's partially the perception shift of what's happening, because time isn't as real, or it feels not familiar anymore, you know, like things feel like forever, it feels like the only thing, or it feels like a blip, it feels like it never happened, it feels like it just disappeared. So things aren't registered in the same way, so then yeah, you could feel really confused and lost, like this won't happen, and then you could get caught in those thoughts, but it's just thoughts. Can be convincing because it feels real in the body, but it ain't true. So there's absolutely nowhere to land. You're not going anywhere. Nothing's really happening. I don't know what this is. I don't know what's going on. Then it becomes really obvious when people seemingly act as if they really do know what's going on. Like, then it's really obvious that it's coming from a position or a type of arrogance in a way. Innocent. Very innocent. Because, I mean, you know, every so-called person or individual or self, like, it is just arrogant, meaning it's coming from I know. Like, I know. It's all about I. But, you know, from here, it's like you see the absolute innocence of it, and that it's happening everywhere. Most places, in most bodies. And energetically, it's literally felt like that's life, you know? Nothing isn't life. Like, what isn't life? And what is distinguishing it from something else? What is making it different from something else? What is making it less than something else? Isn't that all ideas? Isn't that all mental? Isn't that all made up? So you see, you can't land anywhere. So it's not a bummer, it's not a relief. It's not really any of that. It just is what it is. My hair gets greasy so fast. I'm pretty sure I showered yesterday. Or maybe it was the day before. But I swear I'm clean. Or am I? I swear I am. But it just gets greasy like super fast. Smells nice.